Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Flying Fluffy Hockey live stream where we get to talk about yesterday's really good preseason game for the Panthers, where the Panthers rallied back from a 2-0 deficit and did the thing again. Comeback Cats in the third period when our AHL team was playing against Carolina's starters. Daniil Tarasov had an amazing 47 save night. I made sure to take a look at the highlights, and especially the 9-minute long Daniil Tarasov showcase. Hey, Eyes and I, thank you for the 5. Thank you for the 5. Says, set off the panic alarm. What's the panic alarm for? Is it for the 31 other NHL teams who watched as the Carolina Hurricanes' main starting top line got Barkov got hurt? What? Are you kidding? Did this just happen today? Just hurt his knee and he got carried off. Oh my god, no! And thank you, Cuban. Thank you, Cuban, for the 2. Thank you, Cuban. For those who have to deal with Tarasov in the future. Icy says, I think we're in good hands when Bob is gone eventually. Hungry Xenomorph says, Carolina's full top line was a collective -8 versus the Checkers. I think never change Carolina. We should have more clarity tomorrow. So he apparently Sasha Barkov went down with an apparent lower injury. He needed off the ice and did not return. This was the first official practice for many of Florida's NHL regulars, including Barkov, Reinhart, Bob, Ekblad, and Marchand. He needed help from a pair of to get off the ice and was not seen again during the remainder of practice. Well, shoot. Eisenite says first Chucky, now Barkov. The hockey gods are angry at us. Cade says Barkey will be fine. The rest will be good for him and for us. It's Frank asks, does anyone know how it happened? There is already all we have is the picture. Is just a picture of Barkov on his knees in one of the face-off circles with the trainers coming to his assistance. Jameson says, hey Kyle, let's get that early season Barkov injury out of the way now, I guess. I should text Dad. Barkov in training. Icy says, are we cooked, chat? Case says, if Tarasov keeps playing close to that, we are set for the three-peat. So, yeah, Tarasov is the only player who was out there for the Panthers last night who's actually going to be in the starting lineup. And Tarasov had 33 saves through 2 periods and ended up with 47 saves on the way to the Panthers' 4-2 comeback victory. So I think we might have found a good backup for Bob. Kate says, no, we aren't cooked. It's much too early to worry about that. Eisenite says, tell us what Jaws says back. Did we ruin his day? Real Cinema says, we aren't cooked. We just won 2 cups. Can't win every year. Frank says, well, now we can trade for Kaprizov. Colin says, Benning looks good. Now, remind me, was Benning the one who scored the go-ahead goal? Most of what I saw from last night, I was pretty much completely focused on. I was completely focused on Tarasov incredible saves. Literally, I could not tell the difference between his play and Bob's. It's apparently a right leg injury for Barkov. That's what it looks like. Yeah, Tarasov. Thomas is off. Tarasov looked good last night. Case Barkov got hurt during the practice today. David says, while it's true we can't win every year, we certainly can win in the next 2 to 4 years. Dynasty. Well, with Zito making the decision he did to give the big contracts to Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand, the Panthers clock has been set where essentially we have 2 to 3 years. We have 2 to 3 years before we will need to rebuild, because Marchand is 37, correct? And, Ekblad has dealt with plenty of injuries throughout his career. And Bennett plays one of the most aggressive styles of hockey of any player out there on the ice. Now is the perfect time to trade for goals for Pasta. So apparently Benning got 2 goals to tie and take the lead. Does that include that hilarious gaffe by the Carolina goalie where Sachwin was able to basically pickpocket him behind the net, and then Benning was wide open, all alone, empty net in front? Mike says Benning did not score 2 goals. Derek says hello to Kyle Chat and picture of Roy Shire. David says ESPN believes Bob will sign an extension similar to Marchand's contract. Hello, Skylar. Hello, Anthony. Case thinks the Cats will be fine without Chucky and Barkey. They still have a lot of skill, and their play style gives them a chance every night. Oh, I definitely agree with that part. So, yeah, fingers crossed that Barkov recovers quickly. Colin says, I guess ESPN gave credit to someone else for Benning's second goal. Anthony says, are you still thinking we might trade Erod and maybe go after a young guy like Alexander Holtz? Because Vegas can't afford to sign him to an extension. Case says getting hurt during practice is really odd. Probably a pre-existing injury. You think so? To answer your question, Anthony, I really don't believe that the Panthers would try and trade Erod unless the new cap rules forced them to. David says, no football for me this weekend, but big game next week. Yeah, for those of you who tune into Flying Fluffy Football, Um, yeah, Dad, Jaws and I will be streaming that Monday night's game between Dolphins and Jets, both 0-3 and looking for any bit of life for their season. David says they're hiring a Zamboni driver at the practice facility, so maybe the ice was bad. Yeah, tank bull. Jameson says, I wonder if this is the same knee that Barkov injured in Anaheim a couple of years ago. Well, it's apparently was a right leg injury this time. Anthony says, Kyle, the reason why I'm saying we might go after a young guy like Alexander is because most of our core is late 20s, early 30s, and you know how fast hockey catches up to play. Well, I would say Zito probably won't be trading for the young guys until it's become apparent that the core has actually lost the step, because the Panthers have essentially a core 10 locked up, and there's no real reason to mess with team chemistry at the moment with a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion that's gunning for a third cup in a row. Hagel's hit on Barkov affected his leg too, I believe. Yeah, Dolphins with frowny face. There are so many 0-3 teams in the NFL this year. One is in the same division. Anthony says, Kyle, don't you want to continue the dominance? We need to start worrying about the future because we can't rely on Barkov, Kachuk, and Ekblad for this long. We need to start thinking about the future. Well, I think it's at this rate, it's inadvisable to doubt Bill Zito. He's only given us 3 straight Eastern Conference championships and 2 straight Stanley Cups. Real Sino says, I can't believe the Texans are 0-3 and the Colts are 3-0. Yeah, I can't say I saw that coming either. But apparently the CJ Stroud's regression behind his horrendous O-line is a very, very real phenomenon. And apparently in order for a player to unlock their true potential, they must first leave the New York Giants. Michael says Florida Panthers going to meet Toronto north of the border. Mike says yes, but we are the best 0-3 team out there. The Dolphins would be 2-1 if it weren't for special teams and Tua turn the ball over. Just saying. Kate says, looking forward to Buccaneers versus Eagles happening soon. Go Bucks. And Anthony says, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm doubting Bill Zito that he can do it, but I feel that we might become like the Miami Heat, where we care so much about the championship window and sacrifice the future? Well, look, we've already got the future cooking right now. We've got Mackie Semaskevich coming off of his rookie season, and I'm sure that Samo is poised to have a breakout season. Samo will probably be a key contributor to future Panthers championship teams. So, on a random subject, can you believe that the Miami Marlins are still mathematically alive in the playoff race in baseball? Kenneth says, "Go Chargers!" Yeah, 3-0 against and all against divisional opponents. Color me impressed. When are the Chargers going to start charging it again? Colin says, "Don't jinx the Marlins." David says, "Marlins have a good young team." Anthony says, "Kyle, I didn't realize this until recently when I watched a video talking about Sam Bennett. I always thought he was 6'3", 215 pounds like Alex, but he's only 6 feet, 190. So, I think the Marlins. So the Marlins would have to win all of their 4 remaining games. The Reds would have to go 1-3 or worse. The Cincinnati Reds would have to go 1-3 or worse. The Mets and Diamondbacks would have to lose all of their remaining 4 games, and the Cardinals would have to go 2-1 or worse in the final 3 to 4 games of the year. So while it is highly unlikely, there actually is a scenario where the Marlins of all teams make it into the postseason because of the endless choking. In the Mets had a playoff spot since April, and they had just recently lost it and had to get it back. Anthony says, "Kyle, the Chargers are not going to charger it up like you think. Look at who the head coach is. You really think he's going to allow that to happen?" Well, I'll credit. I can never remember which Harbaugh coaches which team. Yeah. Jim Harbaugh seems to have far less of a penchant for choking than his brother John. Yeah, Jim coaches Chargers, John coaches the Ravens. The third line could be E2, Marchand, and Kunin. Who will take Barkov's spot on the top line now? Yeah, the Marlins play the Mets for 3 games. I would love it if the Marlins defeated the Mets in all of those games. Even if the Marlins don't make the playoffs, having the Mets miss the playoffs because they couldn't beat the Marlins would be the most hilarious thing ever. Yeah. The only issue Chargers have is that Herbert seems to throw 4 picks per playoff game. IC says, remember, Kyle, we, the Finns fans, could have had Herbert. Well, then Herbert would have been the one getting destroyed behind Chris Greer's concept of an offensive line. Anthony says, I was watching a video too that was talking about the Panthers, and what the guy said was teams are going to take the wrong thing about how the Panthers play and build like that. What teams don't realize is the Panthers play on that thin red line where it feels like they're playing dirty, but they play within the rules because they know that as soon as you get into the playoffs, the refs don't call anything at all. Yeah, Cleveland just caught Detroit in one of the biggest collapses and comebacks in baseball history. How, Detroit? How did you let a 15-game lead on the division during the summer and the 10 double-digit game lead headed into this month? They just threw it all away. And now Detroit might not even make the playoffs. 2 key matchups this week: Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Baltimore. I think one of the things has got to give between the Eagles and Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have been winning all of their games on last-minute scoring drives. But the Eagles' offense might have finally woken up against the Rams. The Rams might have awakened the sleepy Giants by failing to finish off the Eagles when they had a 26-7 lead. Anthony says, Kyle, I think teams are going to learn the wrong things on how the Panthers built their team to be a Stanley Cup champion. They're going to think the Panthers just play physically for physicality's sake, which isn't true, and they think they're dirty. Panthers play on that thin red line. Herbert is 6'5" and big, so he can take more hits, though he's kind of more fragile as well. Yeah, Cleveland was so far behind, they traded some big names, but they just kept winning. Yeah, Detroit was 100% to make the playoffs a month ago. Baker Mayfield is him. Yeah. But now they have no Mike Evans for a few weeks. I'd say the Eagles hand them their first loss of the year. And I think the Ravens should take care of business against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are only 1-2 because they got to play the Giants. Let's be real. Silva says Tarasov is pretty good. Oh yeah, he's good. Yeah, Buccaneers are one of the few teams good at stopping the tush push. I have not heard back from my dad. My phone says he has not read the message yet. Yeah, Lions worked the Ravens. But in case you hadn't noticed, the Chiefs aren't exactly dominant. I mean, Tyquan Thornton was their leading receiver, I believe, in the game against the Giants. Colin says, I think Kansas City wins against Baltimore. I don't know how Baltimore will do against a good Kansas City defense. Stravossi says, typical Dolphins, if we drafted Herbert, he would have been booty cheeks and Tua would be balling out with the Chargers. It's the ownership that is awful that has made this whole thing a mess. Yeah, well, it doesn't bode well for it doesn't look great on ownership when no Dolphins coach has lasted for 4 full years since Dave Wanstead. I believe guys like Flores and Sperano were fired after 3 seasons, and Philbin and Gase were fired during their 4th seasons. David says, I'm not saying Kansas City wins, but Ravens exposed up front, especially O-line. The Lions, yeah, they sacked Lamar like 7 times. Kenneth says, even if Baltimore goes 1-3, I think they can still win the division. Yeah. The AFC North is going to be hilarious this year. Baltimore is clearly being outworked by the true top contenders in the league in teams like the Bills and the Lions. The Steelers offense has been horrendous in 2 out of 3 games. Well, and the most expensive defense in football when not playing the Patriots looks awful. Jake Browning is going to take the Bengals nowhere, and the Browns, they only have the best defense in football and nothing else. Gase was fired after 3. Philbin was fired during his 4th. Anthony says, Kyle, for me, until Baltimore or the Bills prove they can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, this is still the Chiefs' conference to lose. Michael says Montgomery unstoppable on the Lions, but the Bills are better. Well, it's that dual rushing attack that Detroit has between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Literally Sonic and Knuckles, they're called. And to think that through 2 weeks, the Super Bowl champions were looking like the Green Bay Packers, and then they lose in hilarious fashion to the Cleveland Browns. I would say the Lions are looking like, take your pick, it's either Lions or Bills that are the best team in the league right now. What is the Dolphins' maximum amount of wins for the season? Right now, I'm leaning towards 6. I mean, they play the Saints, Panthers, Falcons, and Browns. That's got to be at least 4 wins, right? The Dolphins are probably Dolphins probably will win just enough games to miss out on, say, top 5 draft pick. Cleveland winning over Green Bay 13-10 was the biggest shock, but shout out to Carolina with the 30-0 shutout over the Falcons. Kate, did you mean to say if the Dolphins are not winning those games, Tua needs to be benched? Well, this is going to be one of the most crucial Monday night's games the Dolphins have had in a long time. 0-3 team going up against an 0-3 Jets. One of those teams is walking away with at least some semblance of positive momentum, and the other is going to be dead last in the division and without hope. Lions versus Bills Super Bowl. Yes, please. I'll take that right now, since it's not looking good for the Dolphins to make the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game or go to the Super Bowl. Real Cinema says, I think Aaron Glenn gets his first win on us as long as the Bills. Real Cinema says, as long as the Bills lose. David says, surprised you don't think Eagles are the team to beat? Well, that offense for the Eagles, the passing game was pretty much non-existent through the first 2 weeks. And then it wasn't until the Rams had a 26-7 lead on the Eagles that the Eagles said, oh, wait, we have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and Jalen Hurts is not just a running back. Let's throw the ball. Ouch. Jamie Benn is out with a collapsed lung. Oh, that sounds painful. I wonder how many of you saw the Sharks' hilarious gaffe where they had replaced some championship banners and they had put up a President's Trophy banner from 15-16. But the Capitals were the ones who had won the President's Trophy in that year. Yeah, Eagles have so many weapons. if Jalen Hurts is going to actually remember how to throw the ball. I drafted Jalen Hurts as my quarterback in fantasy, and I got Devonta Smith as essentially a flex option. So what are your Michael says, wow, that doesn't make sense. Kenneth says, does Russell Wilson stay with the Giants or do the Bengals take a chance with him? The Bengals would have to be really stupid to take a chance with Russell Wilson. There's this Kirk Cousins just laying around in Atlanta. Although with how horrible Michael Penix Jr. was against the Panthers of all teams, the Carolina Panthers. Michael says, Florida Panthers versus Maple Leafs Stanley Cup. Let's go. Too bad both the Panthers and Maple Leafs they're in the same conference. I guess I should ask, if the Panthers make it back to what would be their fourth straight Stanley Cup appearance, who do you want the Panthers to face off against? What would be your dream, assuming you don't want to see simply Panthers Oilers round 3? Yeah, well, Kenneth, those circumstances were highly unusual for the Lightning Habs Cup final. Pray that we don't have something that drastic again. You want another crack at defeating Vegas? Personally, I'd love it if we got a chance against the Avalanche. Is there anybody that wants to see a third round between the Oilers and Panthers? Probably only the same kind of fans who love getting Cavs Warriors every single year for the mid-2010s. There was a time when it didn't matter what was going on in the NBA. You just knew it was Cleveland and Golden State at the end of this season. This past year's NBA Finals gave us a really fun matchup in Pacers and Thunder. Too bad the NBA has been ruining their product to the point where nobody really cared about it. Real Cinema says more people would rather see the Oilers in the finals than us at this point. They want McDavid to win. Craig says Cats and Kings is who I'm pulling for. Jameson says, I'm so done with the whole bring the cup back to Canada talk. Let another team try and beat us. Real Cinema says, I'm tired of playing the Oilers in the final, not wanting to be the first team to lose to Canada in decades makes it more stressful. I want another shot at Vegas or Colorado. Well, the Kings got Corey Perry, so I think you have found your new Western Conference champions right there. It's LA, it's the Kings, which would mean Jim Hiller is going to get bailed out of his incompetence repeatedly throughout the postseason. David says, I really don't see anyone beating Oilers in the West. Maybe Abs or Stars. Stars, now that they're no longer shackled by Peter DeBoer, they might actually have a chance. Yes, Guitar Crow. Barkov hurt his right leg and needed the assistance of two trainers to get off the ice. Kenneth says, if I had to pick, I bet Panthers Knights is the likely outcome. So we'll know more about the Barkov injury tomorrow. Yeah, we heard Barkov got taken off the ice with a leg injury. Colin says, I would like to play the Stars in the final, but I don't want to say anything about the possibility of a three-peat until it happens. Fair enough. Does Perry take the Canes to the final, or does round 4 Canes-Oilers change the outcome? Well, let's be honest, if the Kings have to play the Oilers again in the first round, the Kings are getting eliminated. The Kings' performance against the Oilers in recent years is every bit as one-sided as the Bills taking on the Chiefs in the playoffs. Even when the Kings had a 2-0 lead in the series, all the momentum in the world, and had a lead in Game 3, Jim Hiller, with his stupid challenge, single-handedly handed the series back to Edmonton. Yeah, we heard about the Barkov leg injury, Guitar Crow. In fact, I think the only one who might not have heard about it. Oh, hold on. My dad's reaction. Shit. So yeah, make that Kachuk and possibly Barkov that we're going to be without to start the year. Mike says, as far as the Knights go, I'm just going to take the wait and see approach on how well Marner adapts to the team. Kenneth says the hockey guy seems to think Devils take the Metro this year. Mr. Fossey says we are in trouble. Really? The Devils? I would have to assume, unless things go catastrophically wrong, I think the in terms of who wins the division, that's still got to be the Hurricanes, or even the Capitals division to lose, right? It's funny, the Capitals might be the most unsung best team in the conference during the regular season I've seen in some time. As for the Atlantic Division, you know, Panthers Panthers might be the favorites to win the division, but you always have other teams. The Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs won the division last year. The Lightning could win it. You could even have a surprise like the Sens or the Canadiens taking the next step. Yeah, Caps and Jets were the two best teams in the regular season last year. Mr. Fossey says we are in trouble. Well, we just have to find out how bad the Barkov injury is. Real Cinema says I'm trying not to stress this year. Would love a three-peat, but as long as we don't lose to the Lightning, Leafs, Bruins, or any Canadian team, I'll be okay. Well, then that implies you're okay with losing to a team like the Hurricanes or Devils or pretty much any team in the Metro. David says Marner will have another 100-point season and disappear in the playoffs like always. Well, it's this Marner's chance to try and prove that he wasn't the problem. It was the Leafs. I still don't get the switch. How quickly it went from the Leafs fans hating Marner, and wanting him off the team to suddenly now Marner has betrayed them by going to Vegas. Colin says hockey guy picked the Canes to the Cup against Vegas. Seriously, the Canes? I would have been more inclined to believe the Capitals make it there. Kenneth says Marner's going to do well in Vegas, no doubt. So yeah, that's the big news from today. Is unfortunately Barkov got hurt in practice. It's a leg injury, and he had to be helped off the ice. Colin says I saw the clip from the Panthers practice, and they showed the Barkov injury. If you ask me, I think he's fine, and it shouldn't be anything serious. Like, I'm curious, in the hockey, how often are there torn Achilles and ACLs because of just this past week? Just this past week in football, we had two different running backs, James Conner and Najee Harris, fall down. Well, Najee suffered a non-contact torn Achilles, and James Conner had his leg bent in ways that legs should not bend. So, but in hockey, I would assume the skates make it so you're not applying constantly so much pressure onto a hard and movable surface. Colin says it looks like he took an awkward fall and landed on his knee. It wasn't anything crazy, just a small fall on the ice from what the local news station showed. Kenneth says I would think it would be less common. Yeah. That was a big out. That's a big ouchie though. Jamie Benn missing at least 4 weeks after having surgery on his lung. Eesh. Colin, you found the clip on Twitter. Uh, Auto Maddox on Twitter with a joke saying sources say Aaron Ekblad was injured while reading this post. And the post being quoted is the Barkov injury. Apparently, the 2025 Miami Dolphins are first in blitz rates and dead last in pressure rate. You can't make this up. Okay, give me a second. I will Real Cinema says, no more injuries. Hang on, Colin. I found the clip. Prestige. So I'll share. I'll share this. So this is footage. Give me a second. This is footage of what happened to Barkov. So yeah, he just fell down. He was not putting any weight on that right leg. So whatever it is, it looked like he was being very, very careful with it. It's hard to tell because the video is only from the knees up. It looks like his right leg might have splayed out a little awkwardly here, but this is where the injury occurs, and then he's just unable to use any weight on that leg. Yes, I said first in blitz and last in. Mr. Vid says, afternoon, boys. Hello, Mr. Vids. You're just in time to watch the Panthers fans press the panic button because of a Barkov leg injury. David says, Cam Neely and Bobby Orr before him both had their careers shortened a lot by cheap shots to their knees. See, I wish the video showed the full view of how Barkov was positioned at the time he fell. I'm not sure the angle. I think this is the only video I have. For all intents, awkwardly. I mean, he's skating, then his legs sort of splay out, I think, and then he falls down, and then this happens. And my camera has lost connection to the browser. Second. Okay. David says non-contact injury is almost always worse. Colin says, yeah, I don't think it's as bad as it was made out to be. This is Barkov. This is Barkov. This happens today at practice. And yeah, that's Mikkola who collided with him. Let's see. I wonder if there's a way to play this frame by frame. Let's see. No, that just skips forward. Doesn't do anything. So here he's skating normally. There's no real awkward angle that I can see. It's right somewhere here is when he makes the move that he falls down. He's bent his right knee. He's bent his right knee while having his other leg fully outstretched. And then here is where he sort of just falls down, and now the leg extends back out a little and then folds under him as he collides with Mikkola. Yeah, that is Mikkola, Mike. David says not going to speculate anymore. Yeah, it's very hard to tell without a full picture of Barkov. The other guy doesn't seem to touch him until he falls. Just depends on how much he stretched that. Yeah, it's supposedly a right leg injury. Yeah, the Reinhardt's knee on knee versus the Canes looked way worse. Yeah, he got helped off. He got helped off the ice. So that's what we're looking at. Hopefully it's just an awkward fall. Because this right here is you never want to see this. You never want to see your team captain getting assisted off the ice by two trainers after falling down like that. Yeah, it's not a great clip in terms of what you can see. The lower part is blocked. So we're just gonna have to wait till tomorrow, like everybody else, to find out exactly what's going on. Key. Well, I think that'll just about do it. There really wasn't much in the way of news today. Tarasov looks really great. Benning had a good night on our essentially AHL roster. David says, as I said repeatedly during run 2, it isn't supposed to be easy. There will be injuries and other things to overcome. Oh, definitely. Mike says we've seen this 10 times since this player has literally missed over 100 games in 12 years, so you never know. All right, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'll call it an afternoon, and I believe my dad will keep you guys posted on if there will be any sort of stream tomorrow. Monday nights we will see you on Flying Fluffy Football. We'll see you on Flying Fluffy Football for Jets Dolphins. Maybe I can keep this going for 10 more minutes. Let's see. How about I read the bold predictions for every NHL team? I'll read this. I'll read this and then I'll call it a day. Bold predictions for every NHL team. Playoffs, milestones, more. Let's see. Bruins. The Bruins will trade Pavel Saka. The bar is pretty low in Boston for the Bruins to improve on last season's last place finish in the Atlantic with a .463 points percentage. Swayman has had a proper training camp. Last season's key injuries on the blue line have healed. Pasternak showed he can have a 106-point season during turbulent times that included Jim Montgomery being fired and the stunning trade of Brad Marchand. So Bruins trade Saka. Rasmus Dahlin is a Norris Trophy finalist. Red Wings. Steve Yzerman fails upward. So what? He'll get fired via promotion? Panthers. Bobrovsky gets a Marchand's deal. I'll read this one in full. Sergei Bobrovsky is in the final year of one of the most controversial contracts of the past decade. His 7-year deal, signed as a free agent in 2019, carries a $10 million annual cap hit. There were times when it was called a disaster. There were times many wondered if Florida would buy him out. Then there were those 3 times he backstopped the Panthers to the Stanley Cup final, winning twice, and that criticism was drowned out by thumping beats at elbow room championship parties. For a while, it appeared Spencer Knight might succeed him before he was traded to Chicago. Daniil Tarasov, a 26-year-old reclamation project from Columbus, is his backup this season. Unless the Panthers' Department of Goaltending Excellence has another move in mind, running it back with Bob beyond this season seems like the best option. My prediction, he gets a contract that looks similar to that of Brad Marchand, another 37-year-old, which carries a $5.25 million cap hit until he's 43. But to hear the Panthers tell it, having Bob play well into his early 40s wouldn't surprise them. Let's see. Caden Gooley earns league-wide appreciation. So that's the Canadiens' defenseman. Yeah, the Canadiens and Sens are going to be 2 of the most intriguing teams in the entire Eastern Conference this year, I believe. Dylan Cousins sets new career highs. The Lightning will win the Atlantic Division. That is not out of the possibility of reason. Maple Leafs will retain Nick Robertson. And this is the prediction. The Canes will win the Eastern Conference. Jet Greaves takes over the crease for Columbus. Jack Hughes plays 82 games. He thinks Jack Hughes is going to play 82 games. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jack, but unless the blood cost was paid in last year's injuries already, if there's one thing that doesn't seem to mesh well with New Jersey, it's player health. New York Islanders Patrick Waugh coaches his last season on Long Island. Fair enough. Rangers return to the playoffs. I mean the Rangers were in the Eastern Conference Finals just 2 seasons ago, but do they have enough? I mean, JT Miller's come back. I think there's a whole lot of drama there, but they could be the equivalent of the Steelers. Mike says Monday night, don't the Panthers have an exhibition? Is probably going to be a lot more enjoying or interesting to watch than the Dolphins. Flyers win the Gavin McKenna draft lottery. Penguins Sidney Crosby plays somewhere in the playoffs this season. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if the Penguins would be willing to trade Crosby. Ovechkin breaks another Gretzky record. Frank Nazar doubles his points total. The Avs win the Western Conference. I mean, it's totally possible, I think. Max Duchene regresses for the Stars. The Wild, Zeev Boyum outscores Brock Faber. Andrew Burnett keeps his job with Nashville. Jimmy Snuggerud, Calder Trophy finalist. The Mammoth make the playoff cut. Maybe. Kyle Connor stays, makes Marner money. Well, I mean, if the Jets part ways with Kyle Connor, that would spell doom for them, wouldn't it? Ducks are a final week elimination. The Ducks can't even overcome their own issues, let alone. I don't know if the Ducks are a final week elimination, buddy. Nazem Kadri will be traded. Connor McDavid signs a team-friendly 3-year extension. Eliminate the Oilers in the first round for the Kings. What was this dude smoking? Like, literally, the only way the Canes beat the Oilers is if Corey Perry really is a double agent who can feed the Canes all the intel they need. Macklin Celebrini hits 90 points. Kraken are the trade deadline's top seller. Yeah, the Kraken have sort of completely fallen apart. Elias Pettersson cracks 30 goals again. Knights make the conference finals. Yeah, if they don't run into Edmonton again. All right. Now hello, Dana. Barkov is hurt. Yeah, we don't really have good video of it. We only have a view from like the knee up. But we're hoping that it was just an awkward fall. He had to be helped off the ice by two trainers. But yeah, we'll have to wait until tomorrow. We'll have to wait until tomorrow. All right. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'm sure Jaws will keep you posted on whenever the next stream is. You take care, everyone. Thanks for joining me.